This is Aunt Patty with Aunt Patty's Lavender Hour doing our next interview. Our next interview is someone who is very dear to my heart. It's Joss Barton, and she's a screaming radical poet of life and environment.
I'm a radical something, yes.
Yeah, you're a radical something, all right. But by the way, you posted something on the net today that I didn't appreciate because I know you're talking about me. We were talking about how men, especially white men,
White men,
don't pay
yes.
any attention to their skin because they think they're too butch for skin
lotion.
And I did think I was too butch for skincare my whole life. And darling, I am so paying the price now. I itch all day, every day. My skin is driving me nuts.
Yeah, you got a lotion.
It's rankling. It's got calluses where I've not been doing any rubbing.
Well, no. The trick is, as soon as you get out of the shower, your pores are all open. That's when you lotion. It traps in all the moisture and the moisturizing and the butter.
I get that trick, and I do that, but I don't shower every day.
Well, who does, honey, during quarantine?
I digress. This is the lovely, screamingly talented Joss Barton.
It's been so long since you've seen me.
I met Joss when I was doing a gig in St. Louis about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I was randomly invited by a good friend of mine named Dominique, who was playing the fiddle in your band. And I knew nothing about Lavender Country. I knew nothing about the history, had never heard a song. And she's like, but no, please come. Are you doing anything tonight? And I was like, no, I have no plans. And in that time of my life, I had made the decision to medically transition. I had already been transitioning for maybe about a year. I hadn't started hormones. And that period of my life was very dark. I was drinking a lot. I was doing a lot of drugs and drinking, and I was living alone and coming into my womanhood in a darker place than I wish that I probably shouldn't have started it, I guess. And so I went to the show, I listened to the music, and I was literally transfixed and transformed in the audience. Here was this art form of country music, bluegrass music, that I grew up listening to, but translated to me in the language that I knew as a queer person and as a trans person. And I just was overwhelmed with emotion, and I loved it. I laughed, I cried, I danced, like I had all of the range of emotions. And when the show ended, you were signing paraphernalia. You were signing paraphernalia. And so I went and bought an album from JB, who was working the merch table. And I had said that, thank you so much. I loved it. It's amazing, and I was like, listening to this set and this music, has made me realize I don't want to kill myself, because I was very suicidal through a large part of my life. And I was very depressed, dealing with my gender identity primarily, and what that meant for my future. Obviously, what you do is amazing for the message it gives the straight, cis, heterosexual community, but the healing it does for the queers is even more important, way more important.
Of course, it's more important. I wrote it for you, darling. I wrote it for you. Yes, you did come up to me, and I think the one-line sentence was, I was going to kill myself tonight, but after I heard your show, I decided not to.
Yeah, that was the one-word line.
Yeah. And I think my one-word line, as soon as I had heard that, was, well, if you're not going to kill yourself, you might as well come and join Lavender Country and want to do a show.
That's a little editorializing. That's the Patrick storytelling, folks. That part is the Patrick storytelling.
Well, that was, you know, the one sentence in the paragraph. But we did. That night we decided we might want to do a show.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we have. And you sang with Lavender Country, and more importantly, you have read your magnificent, beautiful radical poetry at Lavender Country concerts. And the last time I was in St. Louis, we did a Lavender Country concert in conjunction with you and the trans community. And I talked to you about it beforehand a fair amount. And I said, go ahead, try and steal my show. I don't think you can steal my show. Bitch, you stole my show.
We stole the show. But I mean, no, we all put on a fabulous show. All of us.
Maurice. Maurice won my heart. That was
Maurice had
good.
the room and rapt attention.
Well, listen, let's get into a little bit of your history, dear.
Of course.
Now, you were conceived like south of the border.
I was
somewhere thereabouts. Do you know anything about your actual origins?
Well, you know, with all legendary, iconic people, of course, my origin story is shrouded in mystery. But I was conceived and born in Guatemala City.
You were born in Guatemala.
Yeah, in the middle of the crazy civil war that was happening in the 80s. That was 1986. There was a civil war between the fascist government and some radical communists and socialists.
Yeah. Darling, if it's any consolation to you, I was out on the street demonstrating when you were born.
Yes, yeah. But you know, like what happened in that part of the world in that time. I was born in a hospital, and my mother was a single mother, and she had already had some children. From what I understand, and she gave me up for adoption. And my parents, the people that raised me, had been working with adoption agencies. And they had the opportunity to adopt me. And in order to do that, my mother had to get on a plane from rural southeast Missouri, a small little town called Bunker, Missouri. My mom doesn't speak Spanish. My mom's a country white girl. And so I'd never been on a plane, never been out of the state, I don't even think. And she flies to a different country, not knowing any language, and just does what she wants to do to become a mother, and adopts me and brings me back to the United States.
Back to Bunker, Missouri.
Back to a holler in Bunker, Missouri.
I know it was beautiful. It had that going for it.
It was, well, yes, it's gorgeous.
It's a pretty conservative area, I'm sure.
Of course, yeah, very conservative. Not literally, when I'm talking 99.9% white, I was probably the 1% that wasn't white for many years.
So did everybody in Bunker, Missouri figure out that you weren't white?
You know, my racial conception was incredibly complicated as a child. My parents were obviously having a very brown baby in a very white family. It's hard to explain if you're trying to explain it away. So my parents were very forthright in telling me all the time that I was a special child, that I was adopted. But the outside culture that obviously my parents are ingrained in does not have, in that point in time in the late 80s, early 90s, does not have room in white America, no matter where you're at, for being able to foster a child of color in a very white environment.
And when did you come into consciousness about not exactly being a baseball butch?
Oh my God. So I have many pictures of me dressing up in my mom's like dresses and skirts
Oh,
and
really?
negligees. And I even remember being very, very young, not understanding the difference between boys and girls, because I think I remember thinking everyone was obviously the same, which I think everyone understands that, right? Like if you have a memory of yourself that young, you kind of think everyone is the same until one moment someone tells you it's not. I don't remember who told me that, but I remember the reaction I had was that I was confused because I was like, they were explaining the difference. And I was like, well, then that means I'm a girl. And they were like, no, you're not. And I was like, well, but you're explaining the difference. And no, I'm definitely a girl. They're like, because obviously I'm relating it on an emotional, I am relating
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
emotionally and mentally
Yeah,
and spiritually.
you were telling the truth.
Yeah.
Was it more onerous being a quote sissy unquote in that environment, or was it more onerous not being white? Or can you sort it out?
Um, Not being white, to be honest, in that kind of community and society and environment, which exists in a lot of places, people can like ignore the sissy thing.
You're not the first sissy that stepped out of the holler.
Yes, exactly.
No, you're
Not the
not.
first sissy that stepped out of the holler. Hell no. So there was already a playbook for that community of how
Um,
to appease that, ignore it, explain it away, you know,
they
and
had a methodology.
yes. But
Mhm.
the colorism thing, the racial thing was that like white people don't have. So the racial thing I think was a lot harder for me to understand.
Oh, really? Well, I know a little bit about that. I raised a black child. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did know that.
Yeah, yeah. And he's in his 40s and he lives in Havana now.
Ah,
Yes,
Cuba.
he found he's Cuban in origin. I lived with his mother, who was black and a revolutionary, and we lived in the black community. And my attitude when I took him on was, oh, this is a piece of cake. I got this. I'm doing all this black activist stuff. Uh, this is not going to be an issue. Wrong.
Wrong.
He handled it very well. When when he was about 16, I asked him, how did you negotiate this? I mean, we were living here in the black community, and I was a queer and white, and how did that impact you? And what he said was, well, I just acted like every black kid on the block had a white father who answered the door in an orange house dress. And what he said was it worked. When it really came down hard on me, when I realized fully, as fully as I could, the implications of being the white parent to a non-white child, was when he left Seattle and I put him on the plane to New York City. When he got on the plane, it hit me that it was my job as a father to prepare him to be a black man on the streets of New York. And I failed miserably. I think a lot of white parents who adopt children of color, and perhaps your parents, have the attitude, oh, I got this, it's not a problem, I'll treat you just like you're white.
Right.
Well,
That's exactly
guess
how I was raised.
what?
It's a problem. It's a problem. I think that also relates across not just racial lines, but like all lines. Like most parents, I think they're doing a great job at like raising a child to have good morals, which is obviously admirable. But how do you raise a child to be prepared for if they turn out to be queer and they have to deal with homophobia, if they turn out to be trans, when they enter in a transphobic world, you know, they are disabled and they end up having to be in an ableist world. If they become addicts, they have to deal with that world of shame. Parenting is definitely not easy. I have a lot of sympathy for my parents. You know, like I said, the foundational like bedrock of morality that they gifted me, I also am very grateful to have been given, even though I have discarded some of the specific instructions. So the bedrock, like you said, is there.
I get it. Like my father gave me the gift of integrity.
Mm.
He was a very integral, forthright, honest person. And he showed me how to do that.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, darling. How are you?
Oh,
yes, I have a little surprise for you.
I know. I was like, I hope I see JB.
Yeah, trying to stay safe.
I'm going to paraphrase. He just told me this interview was great because I haven't had enough sense to shut up and listen.
Hey, listen. Okay, so are you going to do some poetry too?
I think I'm gonna read a little something.
Okay, I'm gonna go across the room and listen.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, JB.
My lovely husband, J.B. Broughton.
We love JB.
Everybody loves J.B., but he's my husband.
He is your husband.
So listen, I have heard some of your poetry before, but tell us what happened that got you into this.
Well, you know, I've like I told you, like I believe that this is a gift. Not obviously I've developed it, but like it was always a gift because I can remember being incredibly young and writing, I thought I was going to become like a famous journalist. I went to journalism school, I got a degree in journalism, and I hated every moment of it. I just felt like there was a detachment from reality in the sense that a profession that's trying to be like very honest and forthright of the facts can't see how the world actually works. Because when we tell people the rich control everything, we're being alarmist or we're editorializing. But the rich really do control everything.
And so they didn't want to take that in, huh?
No, they didn't want to take it in.
I just wanted to make one comment about your experience with journalism before we get into your poetry. Because I was going, you know, you're right. It'd be really difficult to be a working class journalist.
Yes.
I mean, like, whoever heard of that? But then I went to the next level in my brain and I realized there are working class journalists.
There are,
yeah. You just don't, they just don't rise to prominence for obvious reasons.
Right.
You know where they are?
Where?
They're writing for all of these leftist newspapers.
Yeah.
I have one working class journalist that I adore. Her name is Megan Cornish, and she writes for the Freedom Socialist.
Love it.
Radical Women in the Freedom Socialist Party, and she's been doing that for her whole adult life. But her shit is just juicy.
Right.
It's really good, and it's really on point. I can hardly wait to get my hands on the next Freedom Socialist because I know I'm going to get a really good, smart, working class journalist to get my news. So they're out there, but they're unsung. But be that as it may, we want to get into your poetry. I know you read your poetry a lot, right?
I do perform a lot. I do travel when I was able to travel, and I do a lot of. Right now, I've been doing a lot of virtual readings, which is a lot of fun.
We're staggering through that now.
We are.
Let's go with something. Do you want to start with something?
Yeah. So I do a lot of long form, stream of consciousness, poetry, prose, sometimes people call it. And one of my latest works is called The wagons ain't here yet. I don't know if that will turn up right side or backwards. I don't know. And so it's a long form poem that I wrote over the course of a year and a half. And it's all told through the perspective of a trans woman. She's never named. Obviously, take your guess. You know, you might figure out who it's being told by. But it's all being told from the perspective of a trans woman of color, fucking and doing drugs and falling in love and watching the horrors of her nation unfold in front of her, right? And the end of the poem is the piece I'm going to read. And the only other thing that you need to know before I start reading it is the title, The Wagons Ain't Here Yet. It's a metaphorical reference to all the forms of oppression that people that are marginalized have experienced throughout history, whether it be a wagon, a plantation, a gas chamber, whatever it is. So the title is kind of a play on words to that concept of like, oh, this thing is not coming here yet, but in reality, it's here, right? So yeah. So this is an excerpt from The Wagons Ain't Here Yet. The Holler, Paradise. Guilt-riddled, sacrificial body, fighting to find something hidden in this world. Measure out an ounce of sin, a heart burdened by the word, a mama, a daddy, a family ordained by the old rugged cross, and a queer-bait child in a violent, spiteful world. Praise to 32 years on this wretched planet. Praise to my first molestation. Praise to Louisa's banana bread. Praise to Luther's amputated legs. Praise to Janet Jackson's The Velvet Rope. Praise to semen-stained hump pillows. Praise to Daddy's belt. Praise to Shall We Gather at the River. Praise to Matthew Shepard, Venus Extravaganza, Peppa LaBeija, Tawana Johnson, Cece McDonald, Michael Brown, Larry King, Sasha, Nicole, Bryn, Kelly, Willie, Ninja, Tamar, Rice, the Charleston, 9, Kiwi, Herring. Praise to bareback bottoms and motel meth orgies. Praise to pause loads. Praise to anal warts. Praise to AIDS. Praise to the $20 billion Truvada patent. Praise to amateur tranny porn. Praise to hornet swollen tits. Praise to growing up a Reynolds County holler faggot. And praise to the brown femme body still alive. She has silenced tectonic tongues, summoned tears on dance floors, conquered space and time, birthed prophecy on altars of radioactive pink coals. She has envisioned herself assassinating Tony Perkins on the steps of the White House with a sniper bullet through the brain. She has duck walked beneath disco ball goddesses, voguing with coked out cunty wrists, her body submerged in iridescent pools of molly dust. She has rubbed her tits with Vaseline and slicked her cock with silicone lube to fuck tranny-hungry trade bottoms, ingested thousands of cum loads, contracted millions of pathogens, and loved only one man. She is no longer suicidal. She knows this life, this world, these pains, they are a-changing. He fucks her into blue oblivion, threads silk ropes down yellow calcite wells. He tells her the wagons ain't coming, but she sees them crawling down the ridge, smells the copper-tainted wheels in the air. Here's the transsexual ghost trapped in the M for T Craigslist matrix, clawing out the silicone from their lips. Gay boys one day, femme queens the next. We who are not so young remember the glory holes before they vanish behind gentrified walls. Never, never gonna give you up. Too much cocaine, not enough eyeliner, and the proverbial schism. What's your brand of poppers? Queens huffing till the disco ball breaks and the moon is shattered across the tinted windows of sacred bathhouses. Sometimes nostalgia is best worn like frayed tucker thongs, cum and shit stained, full of life. Good riddance. She had it coming, I tell ya. All this puritanical hogwash, sucking off the swine while polishing the silver. This entire fucking house, nothing but chairs stacked on chairs. Pots and pans flowing from the sinks, closets vomiting gowns, sequins, fringe, organza, rayon, silk, velvet tongues lapping up the iridescent cocaine dust. More mirrors than you could count, always burning the reflection of a nation tired of pretending. Yes, we are hacks and whores. Yes, let's get it all over with. The mailman has stopped coming because nothing but a small mountain of junk mail and bills and coupons block the doorway. Yes, we can smell the smoke and the burning wires, but the computers must stay on, or else who will tell us we are pretty? Who will feed us emoji cum? And where the fuck will I find a true blue top? No more bad porn drags, no more bug chasers, no more Barbie trannies, no more theories worth pissing on, no more prayers, no more golden calf. Adios, au revoir, I'll see you all in hell. Thank you, American Eden. Thank you, Daughters of Eve. Thank you, Blood Moon. Thank you, transsexual goddess pumping tits and ass to thank you next lip sync on a black box stage in Chicago. Welcome the return of locusts, of rat plagues, of parasites, of swine, of eco-suicide cults, of junkie fields, of hustlers with big cocks and bloody fingers. These are not angels. They are white women. These are not boys, they are cops. These are not new days. This is a coup. The year is 2019 and the wagons ain't here yet. The year is 2019 and slow moving riots are here, but the wagons ain't here yet. The year is 2019 and my mother won't look at my breasts, but the wagons ain't here yet. The concentration camps are here. The attempted assassinations are here. The lone wolf death squads are here. The guns are here. The year is 2019 and Dana Martin dies in an Alabama ditch on January 6th, but the wagons ain't here yet. And this poem was written before I was born, traced with fingers on silt, recited by trans women resounding their lives into holy skies. This was always a warning, a transcript, a nightmare, a glimpse through the cracks, and a horn to call down rapture. And when we finally set the wagons on fire, and the flames crystallize our eyes, remember to sing these words. Pure city, Babylon's fallen, to rise no more. Oh, Babylon's fallen, 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 Babylon's fallen, to rise no more. And that's it.
You did say that.
I did say that.
Yeah, you did say that. It's really raw stuff.
But it definitely comes from a very unapologetic perspective of truth that I will never compromise on. I don't write for straight people. I don't write for white people. I don't write for cis people. I write for trans women and trans women of color. That's who I write for.
And if somebody comes along who happens to be able to get part of it,
well, that's fabulous. Of course, fine. I love it. But I write for my community because that's all. That's what I know.
I know about that. Sort of the way I wrote Lavender Country.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a little blurb on your organization.
Yeah, sure.
supporting trans people in the St. Louis area?
Yeah, it's a Metro Trans umbrella group, the biggest trans organization in St. Louis. They're doing great work. They're feeding trans people during this pandemic. They're doing grocery delivery, and they're giving us like prepaid cards. So I haven't been to a grocery store in weeks because they make sure I'm like fed, but not just me, all trans people.
Well. You have a special place, and we'll mount the link.
Yeah.
So when the clouds lift, we're going to Bloomington, Indiana, and we're going to do a Lavender Country show, and you're going to open it. But I'll see you there and then. Bye, honey. I love you.
Give
I'll
a
see you
kiss
when
to
I get to
JB.
St. Louis.
Yes.